Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. If you want to accelerate your mixing, I would highly recommend you guys learn sound design. So I'm just going to show you like basic principles inside of sound design. We're going to use Minimal Audio's current plugin to really go through a lot of this. I promise you guys that when you become a sound designer, you'll stop thinking about sound as a technical thing. You know, not saying sound can't be a technical thing. I'm just saying that a lot of us, when we're learning to mix, we think there are these rules that we have to follow, and it's because we don't understand our intent, what we're trying to do. So let's create like a melody of some sort. Okay, so let's just create something like this, something really simple. Now, the first principle we need to understand, we're going to go through the principles. First principle is to understand harmonics. Okay, so if I open up what's called a Wave Candy plugin, and then we put it on spectrum mode, this will be a great teacher for what sound actually is. So let's put it on spectrum mode. We're going to turn the color up. We're going to turn the resolution to all the way to the highest. And now when we play a note, okay, it shows us quite literally the frequencies in a note. So if I play one note, we see these harmonics, they're called. Harmonics are basically multiples of a specific frequency. So if my bottom frequency here, which is that yellow dense tone, because that's where the majority of the sound sits. Okay, let's say it's like 150. The second harmonic is going to be 2 times 150. The third harmonic is 3 times 150. Okay, on and on. So the question now becomes, what separates a sine wave from a triangle wave or a square wave or a sawtooth? So let's switch the... And now we can visually see, oh, it's just harmonics that are the difference between a sine wave, a pulse wave, and a sawtooth. So if we now understand that harmonics creates the timbre of a sound, we can play the same note, but we're going to get different timbre based on the harmonic content of a sound. In short, you know, pulse waves give you odd harmonics and sawtooth give you even harmonics. So that way we can understand the types of bite. So for example, here's a square wave type of bite. It's very just like crunchy and like video game-esque. Okay, that's what a square sounds like. Now if we switch it to a sawtooth, it's a little more open, it's a little more breathable. Whereas a pulse is a little more filled out. You hear it's like filled out with more tone. Sawtooth is bitey, but it's a little more breathable. That's the way I think about the difference. And I'm showing you guys that to really show you what is sound itself. Okay, once we understand what sound itself is, if I want to make my beat harder, I'm going to need more harmonics. Okay, so now I understand what I'm trying to do with the sound. I'm not just saying my beat needs to be hard. What plugin do I need? I'm going, my beat needs to be hard. How do I add harmonics? Which plugins create harmonics? And now your questions become different questions. Okay, so let's make this a sawtooth. Pull this back up. Now another, understanding about sound is width. But what is width? So for example, if I have a 3x OSC, let's turn this down. And let's just add a tone here. We're going to clone the exact tone. Okay, so here's the sound. Actually, let's pull it down an octave. It's too bright. Okay, so here's the sound. Now the sound is pan-centered. But what happens if I pan the sound to the left? It's in our left ear. What happens if I pan it to the right? It's in our right ear. Now what happens if I clone this exact sound at this same exact amplitude and the same exact pitch and phase? And what if I clone everything about it, but I pan one to the left and one to the right? It sounds like it's in the center. Because middle information is when both speakers are playing the same exact information. Our brain creates mono in the middle. That's what mid information is, or mono mean. Mono doesn't necessarily mean center, so I want to be careful with my words. But the center image or the mid signal is your brain creating that because the left ear is hearing the same exact thing as the right ear. Now, what happens if we make a subtle difference between those notes? So what I'm going to do is change the tuning. The one that's on the left is going to be detuned from the one on the right. And now our brain starts to create width to the sound. Nothing changed except for the tuning of the one pan left. And now we have this perceived width to the track. So width, stereo imaging is really our brain tricking us. For the most part, it's just tricking us. So now that I understand that's what side information is, now side information means, it's the difference between your left and your right ear. That's the side information. So let's quickly, I'm going to turn off my mic. We're going to listen to the center image versus the side information. But first, we need to load up a plugin that can actually monitor. So let's do a multi-band here. You guys don't need this plugin. I'm just using it as a quick plugin to load up. And we're going to go to expert mode. We're going to switch this to mid. So now we're only listening to the middle image. So as I crank these up and make them more stereo or more different, I'll say, with the pitch, we will lose some of that middle image. So let me turn off my mic. So what we just heard was when I changed the pitch of the second oscillator, it made it hard for us to hear a consistent middle sound. And that's because the middle is an illusion. Okay, the middle is when the sound is playing the same exact thing on the left and right. If that changes, the middle signal is not the same anymore. Okay, so that's what we heard it wobbling up and down. That's because now the sound is different. There's a difference between the sound. One thing I forgot to solo was the side information. So I want to separate in your mind the word mono from middle. Mono does not mean middle. We can have a mono sound pan left. That does not mean middle. Middle is a mid signal. Side is the difference between your left and right ear. So let's hear the difference between the side versus the middle signal. Now, more realistic example would be something like a reverb. So if you have a mono sound, let's say mono here, you have a mono sound pan centered, and then you add reverb to widen it out. A lot of your sound is on the sides. Okay, so we'll kind of quickly go through this. I don't want to complicate it too much. So let's turn this back on. Now let's add a reverb to our sound. So let's go to the effects and add some reverb. Now in real life, my voice is going, straight to my microphone. It's going, hitting that wall, hitting that wall all at the same time. And it's coming back into my microphone. You're not just hearing my voice. You're hearing my voice plus it bouncing around at all those different times and coming back to the microphone. So you're not just recording your voice, you're recording your voice and the room. And, that's what gives you a lot of the dimension in your sound. And so those small time differences of my voice bouncing around the room, they're basically small delays that add up, a million small delays adding up. That's what reverb is. Okay, so now we hear that reverb on the side. So now when I use that multi-band, let's solo the side. Here's the middle image where you can hear my voice, but because my voice is monophonic, it's only being sent to the center, the middle. If I go to side, you're not going to hear me talk. So it's the combination of middle plus the side information that builds this image of a sound. And again, we can, breaking sound design down gives us all these principles that we can apply to mixing. Now, another one is simply, we went over timbre. Okay, we went over, middle versus side. Now let's talk about compression, I guess, would be the next thing. Now, the thing is to do this in sound. Okay, let's do it through a shape. Now, most compression, not all, most compression, creates a concave curvature to a sound. Okay, so let's create some kind of bass. Let's start here. Let's create like a kick. So let's do a low octave, and then let's just give it a small decay curvature here. No sustain, just a decay curvature so that it fades out. Pretty basic, okay? So from here, let's say we want to, add a compressor, so to speak. What does a traditional compressor do? It does a lot more than just shape a curve, but we can, trying to use all the words I can think of, we can create the curvature within a sound to make it snappy. So instead of adding a compressor, we could just manually make a concave curvature over the decay to make it snappier. So let's do it before and after. Here's before. Very boomy because it's very filled out. No shape to it, no contour. And then here's with a concave curvature to it. It becomes snappier because now we have a transient that goes from a high volume, in this case, to a low volume quickly. And that's called dynamic. When you have a slow decay curvature, you have dynamic, but it's very slow. So it doesn't create a nice contrast. When you have very fast transients, it creates contrast. And this is what creates dynamic range in your song. Okay, so that's what most compression does. So now let's go to our effects. I think they have a compressor in here. Let's add compressor. Now this compressor is doing cool stuff like multi-band compression. Let me see if there's a way to reset. Let's go to default. Let's turn off the high band for now. Okay, so we want to shape the curvature. Now the high frequencies are moving fast, but the low frequencies are still kind of trying to catch up. So let's grab this low band, and we want to set, these knobs are a little bit different. So let's just set the attack time, threshold of downward compression, the ratio. Now this works in percentages, so I'm not used to percentages. So we're just gonna eyeball it there. So what it's doing is it's pulling down the volume for me through this compressor. So if we turn it off, just like doing its thing. Let's make this band a little bit wider. So we can see every time that transient hits, it lowers the volume and it keeps doing this. Now it's not doing it to a dramatic amount unless I have the ratio turned way up. Okay, but my goal in showing you that, now that compressor wasn't as visual, so I'm going to use something a little more standard. Also, too, we're going to give an envelope to what's called the pitch. This is more sound design. Okay, so what creates hardness? It's not just the sound, it's harmonics. We know that for sure, but it's also pitch movement in a very fast amount of time. So let's grab this envelope and let's drag this over top of, I believe the semi value is going to give us that. I'm looking for their coarse pitch, but I don't see it. So let's drag it over there. That even do what I thought it was going to do? Oh, here it is. Pitch right here. Okay, I put it over the wrong thing. So now let's give it a decay curvature here. So now it's going woo like that. So again, what makes something snappy is when it has a lot of contrast in a short amount of time. Okay, because it feels like it's going from high to low very fast. If it goes from high to low at a slow amount, you're not going to feel like you're going fast. So let's pull the decay curvature down. And this is how you add the knock to your kick. Now there are different ways to do it. So let's lower the decay curvature. And let's give it that concave curvature. So now it's shaped more like an actual kick. So now I know we're adding more frequency content to the sound by creating pitch dives. So now we have high frequencies moving into lower frequencies over time. And that's what creates hardness, so to speak. And now we need some harmonics. So let's add something like a distortion plugin. Now I wouldn't always go to distortion, but let's just use their built-in. And now we're getting what? Upper harmonics to the sound. We're filling out the sound more. So you see these horizontal lines, those are called harmonics. So we're taking that sine wave shape and making it more like a sawtooth or a square shape. I think they have a clipper built into this, if I'm not mistaken. So there is, I believe this stands for soft clip. Where's that health bar? Here we go. Yeah, soft clip limiter. So if you turn this on, you should be able to just crank the knobs here. So what are we doing? We're adding harmonics. This is quote unquote hardness. Now let's go back to the original sound and let's just tweak the envelopes. Now that click you guys are hearing is called the attack and release. So a faster attack will create that click noise. So if you don't want that, you got to pull up your attack time. Now we have more of a realistic kick sound. Okay, and now we just got to drive the signal to get more harmonics out of the sound. So there's a million different knobs on this thing. I'm just going to use basic stuff here. We could blend this in. All right, now from here, I'll probably run it through a compressor. Now I have my own favorite soft clippers that are not that plugin specifically. So I would use something like a gold clip. Again, we can spend more time on the actual sound design itself. I'm just going to quickly show you guys principles. So before we went over timbre, stereo imaging, we went over mid versus side. We went over harmonics. We went over what catches the ear, you know, contrast, dynamic, what is dynamic, how to create dynamic. We went over what a compressor is doing for the most part, usually speaking, is the stuff that we just showed you, which is cutting the sound down in a concave way most of the time. Not all compressors do that though. Now from here, you would push the kick a lot harder. Again, we don't have time to sit here and go through every little thing about this plugin. We could also do fixed notes, so you could type in the note there. Let's do like C. I don't even know what octave a kick would be. Let's do C2 maybe, C1. Okay, I'm used to the pitch of a kick more than the note value, but we could also do that. And now if I change the waveform, we get different harmonics. Now, you normally wouldn't use a sawtooth as a kick or a square wave, but really we're turning a sawtooth into a square wave because we're using soft clippers and distortion. So this is what the shape is. We're turning that sine wave into this square shape. And that's what it gives that's what's giving the sound its hardness, is that we're turning a sine wave into more of a square wave. So once you understand that mixing is really sound design, let's drive the signal into gold clip. Okay, so this probably needs a lot more effort involved with the sound design, but hopefully you guys are getting the concept. All right, so I'm trying to think of anything else sound design can teach you. Now, I'm going to use Serum because that plugin is more new to me here. So let's open up Serum and let's just quickly go through a lot of this stuff. All right. All right, so now let's apply these techniques, but to a different sound. So I move a lot quicker through Serum just because I'm used to it. So basically, we're going to do FM from B. This is going to create a timbre over the sound, but only for this short amount of time. So we're creating a transient, basically. Okay, so right now the sound is sustaining, so we need to tell it to have a decay curvature so it doesn't sustain. Okay, and let's run this through channel 1. Okay, so if I take FM off, we don't have that harmonic. Yeah, I'll just make the thing bigger. So if I turn oscillator B on to modulate oscillator A, we're going to create more harmonic content. As we can visually see. So it's all about playing with different harmonics and stacking harmonics and how do we create harmonics over time, pardon me. Now, filters are used to manipulate the harmonics that we already have. So filters can remove harmonics. They can enhance certain harmonics if we use resonance. So there's a billion things we can do with filters. Again, that's a different ball game. Now let's switch this to a different curvature, a different waveform, I should say. And let's switch this to a sawtooth. There we go. Let's add some more voices. And now basically we're stacking up the same sound, but because the pitch is different, all the harmonics are stacking close to each other, creating a subtle dissonance. Let's make a chord out of this. So now we have a lot of these frequencies. It's almost becoming a noisy sound. So this is why sawtooth, waveforms are used to make really big EDM sounds, is because it fills up all the frequencies. We could use a filter to start to pull that in. Let me see. I must have a plugin on. Forgot this was on. Okay, so that plugin the whole time was on. So here we go. Here's what it actually sounds like. Is that a filter? Now we don't always have to have an envelope controlling our filter. We can also have the LFO control it, so it's more movement over time. Now I'm going to do more advanced stuff here. So let's do some stuffs. Again, I can move a lot faster in Serum. My CPU is going crazy. We don't even have plugins on here like that. Oh, it's Gold Clip. I forgot I had that. There we go. So again, what is width? Width is the difference between your left and the right. If I have some, voices, tuned one way, and then some voices tune another way on the other side, they're going to sound wider because their difference between the two is in the tuning. So once you understand the core fundamental of what mixing is, your sound design ear will lead to you learning a lot more mixing techniques, in my opinion. So again, what is width? Now, sometimes the sound has too much width, but what happens if we, deal with the side image? So what I'll do here is, this is the last concept for today, because I think you guys are starting to get it. Okay, so what happens if we start dealing with the side of the image? Excuse me, guys. We can start to basically make the sound smaller by taking away the side information. Why? Because what we're going to do is remove the difference between left and right. What happens when you remove the difference between left and right? Stuff feels more centered. So let's make this side compressor. So here's what we're listening to. This is what the compressor hears. So if I tell it to turn the volume of the lows on the sides, that low will now become perceived mono. So it essentially made the image smaller, more narrow in the low end. So here's before. Again, we have contour of sound. We have a lot of frequencies because of harmonics. We have a sawtooth sound. We have contour because we go from a lot of frequency to a low frequency using that filter. And we have an interesting, mid-side. And that's how you can apply sound design to mixing. How do we make it more mono? Compress the sides even more. And now we lost all that stereo width. And what happens if we do the opposite? What happens if we compress the mid signal? Now we're really just left with the side information. But then we thin out the sound because now it's only one speaker playing the difference and the other speaker playing their difference. So it's not unified power coming out the speakers or your headphones in that case. So now we're thinning out the sound, compressing the middle signal a little too much. So now that you guys understand the keys, hopefully you will go and apply these. Number one thing I'll say is the final closer here is that as a beginner / intermediate, person in mixing, what happens is, I don't know why I had this EQ. My EQ is taking out like all my voice. Let's leave it like right around here. So basically what happens when you're a beginner is that you don't leave enough contrast. You don't leave enough dynamic range in your mixes. So that's why I'm teaching you guys this stuff, to pull back dynamic range back into your mix. There's a lot more to it than that, but Just wanted to show you guys some sound design principles that you can apply to mixing. Even my own vocal chain was cutting out too much of my fundamental, so my voice sounded weird. Like imagine my voice sounded like this. It's not natural, sounds weird, because that's not even my actual voice. My voice is way down here, but the problem is I have a fan above me at the same frequency. So I have to kind of compromise here. But this is my actual voice. Okay, now it feels more natural. Now, when I have my thing way up here, cutting out my entire fundamental frequency, it's like, you know, you're not hearing my actual voice. All right, so anyhow, a lot more to teach you guys. Thank you for watching. It's Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. Subscribe if you're new. Go to BusyWorksBeats.com. Look for the Mixing Fundamentals course to get your hands on the components of mixing. And you guys can apply that to mix. Peace.